Hi, I'm Kristen. I am primarily a writer in addition to 1/3 of this podcast. I've done some journalism, some blogging, just as everyone else has, but primarily I write fiction. And I always try to incorporate the child-free perspective into whatever it is I'm writing. Most recently, in The Age of the Child, that novel sitting there behind me, where you have a woman living in a post-Roe v. Wade America that actually looks a lot like Texas, where abortion has been criminalized, and in this case, as has birth control, which is also kind of hard to get in a lot of places. And this is all happening in the world of a child-free woman. No, that's what I do.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I am a coach for Childfree Women. I help Childfree women work through feelings of insecurity, guilt, shame, or anger that may arise due to our choice not to have children. I'm also the host of the Honest Supper podcast.
Hi, my name is Lenora Faye. I am a child-free lifestyle content creator. I am a speaker and a moderator, most recently with the 2021 Virtual Child-Free Conference, which you can watch on YouTube. And I'm also the host of Child-Free Morning Chat on Clubhouse. And we are the 3 founding non-mothers of Childfree Girls. So this episode, we are going to be talking about abortion, specifically the most recent development coming out of Texas. I'm not sure if we're going to speak on that specifically. I mean, that's what's inspired today's conversation. So we have different things we're going to mention about that lovely news, recognizing that the US is not the only country in the world, but we have opinions on what's going on. So let's start with Kristen, as you are the resident American out of the 3 of us. Did you want to, let's assume there are people listening who don't know what's happening in the US, or specifically with Texas with abortion. Do you want to give us a quick overview of what's going on, and then we'll just go right into the conversation?
Yes, I have not read the whole House bill that passed in Texas.
What?
However,
I thought you did.
I didn't read the whole thing. I did read the part of it that says you can, like, individuals can sue abortion providers. And if, like, where I'm confused is whether the suing person is awarded $10,000 or if the abortion provider has to pay $10,000. All I know is that there's a $10,000 number in there. And I feel like if I had known this question was coming, I would have had the answer to that. Let me just Google.
Question. It just says they will receive $10,000, but I don't think it, like, the court awards it, but where does the court get the money from?
Okay, so Market Watch says that the $10,000 penalty could incentivize bounty hunters to make $10,000 is the minimum, by the way. Yeah, private citizens can sue anyone who aids and abets an abortion following the roughly 6-week gestation period. The plaintiffs can recover at least $10,000 for each abortion prohibited under law. The money damages could run well higher if a lawsuit has many defendants in the case. The defendant, whether a provider, funder, clergy person, friend, or a family member, pays the damages, which are set at a minimum of $10,000.
But not,
and if there are many defendants,
but not the person having an abortion is not being sued.
Which is interesting because, like, talk about taking agency away from a woman. Like, she doesn't even get in trouble for seeking her own abortion. So it's kind of like, and I don't even know if this is a very accurate analogy, but I posted some analogy on my Instagram feed that was like, it's kind of like if you're a farmer and your cow trespasses into another farmer's field. The cow is not in trouble because a cow is going to do what a cow is going to do, but the farmers will deal with it themselves. It's almost like it really is like women are being treated like, if they don't get in trouble for seeking their own abortion, then they aren't in trouble for it, but the people who help them are.
Yes, that's exactly.
Don't they get? Yeah, but don't they get like jail time for attempting to get an abortion or for getting an abortion?
Women receiving an abortion cannot be sued under the law.
So what is the law against? Is there a law against women specifically for taking the action to getting an abortion in Texas? Or this is like it doesn't
What if
make
she
any,
uses a coat hanger or something? Like, what if or drugs?
well,
So
then
I don't know.
the coat hanger gets sued because it's the coat
Yeah.
hanger that did it.
It's like, I think it's like what they try to do with like drugs. I guess like the people who are addicted, they're not the ones who usually get in trouble.
Right,
Who gets in trouble is whoever provides them with the drugs and the producers of the drugs,
right,
and
right.
right, like people who are addicted go to rehab basically. So
But don't you think the way this is worded sounds like, oh, the women, first of all, it's an obvious statement that the woman can't choose what to do with her own body, but it's like she has no ability of thinking that this is wrong. Therefore, we shouldn't punish her. We should punish the
Everybody
provider.
around her.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know if I'm making my point clear enough, but it seems like it's just removing the woman altogether, even though this is her life. It's
Well,
just,
right. We are the cow.
yeah. So there's no, of course the woman doesn't know what she's doing, but everybody else should be more responsible in making sure that she keeps, like, she has the child, follows through with having the child.
Well, I
That's
guess
what
if
it
they don't
sounds
want to,
like.
I guess if they don't want to give you control in one area, you can't have it anywhere. I mean,
Right.
that kind of, that really, it's a little scary in that way because it's sort of setting a precedent that we aren't able to choose anything, whether it's being criminally murderous to our embryo or I don't know, it's creepy.
It's like the next thing they're going to do is say, okay, well, a woman can have a driver's license, but we're going to sue the people that gave it to her, or the person that voted, like, or people who are running the polling stations, letting a woman in to vote. She can't be in trouble for doing the thing, but it's everybody else that supports her basically living. Like,
And really, if a woman can't be held accountable for her own abortion, how could she possibly be held accountable to vote?
or let's take it a step further, raise the child. Like,
I
it's
mean,
just,
if we can't, the point
yes,
is, I guess, if we can't make our
right.
own, if we can't get in
Yeah,
trouble for our own decisions, then we also can't, like, we don't have our own decisions.
yeah, you're right. I mean, and voting for women hasn't been around forever either,
No,
anywhere. And still some places, I'm assuming women can't vote in certain countries. I don't know, but I'm assuming that that's still the case for some places.
I think Ann Coulter, the freaking genius, um, thinks she argued somewhere that women shouldn't vote.
Didn't we come across a tweet? I'm sure we did, saying that only the husband should vote, like in a marriage.
That's
Only
probably a
one
transformed
household. Yeah, I
doofus.
think,
Yeah.
yeah. One of those people, or Steven, whatever his name is, one of those people had stated that it should be the man who votes, and that the women should not interfere with the male voting in the household, and only one per household should vote. I mean, and these are American Twitter accounts, I should point out. Not that that doesn't happen up here in Canada, because we still have to watch our backs too, but it just, Americans seem to be more brave in vocalizing that stuff.
America's a shit show right now, is what America is.
So, okay, so now that we've laid the groundwork for what this conversation is about, Isabel, what are your thoughts on what has happened in Texas?
well, the first time I heard about this bill being passed, I thought that's going to set a dangerous precedent. And I heard that there are at least half a dozen more states, half a dozen more states that are thinking to do the same thing in the United States. So that would be 7 states at least passing similar bills. And it's to me, anti-abortion laws have never been about the fetus. They've always been about controlling women's bodies, or people who have a uterus bodies. And one of the things that really caught my attention about this is that they never mention in any of this, like, the other person responsible for the pregnancy, the person that puts in the sperm. It's like, oh, you got knocked up. We don't care if you're like married, unmarried, if it was rape, if it was whatever you call it. Like, that person is not even in the equation. And I don't understand why pregnancy still falls, like all the responsibility of pregnancy still falls almost 100% on the person who's carrying the fetus. Oh my God. That to me is unconceivable, because there is a lack of acknowledgement, there is a lack of responsibility, there is a lack of accountability. And so the people who have a uterus are the ones who actually have to deal with, and then the other people are just like, I don't care. The law doesn't really touch me. I think it's so unfair. Like, unfair doesn't even start describing it. It's just a very mild word to describe it at this moment.
The only thing about that is that for men to get equally in trouble for a woman getting an abortion, I mean, I think the argument some people are making that let's say a woman is raped and impregnated, she gets more trouble. Well, maybe not in Texas, maybe she doesn't at all, but there's more of a offense placed on her for getting an abortion than there is to the person who did the raping. And I don't know what state it is in. I don't know if it's Texas, but a rapist can sue for custody rights to his rape consequence or outcome, which is just baffling. But when it comes to the sperm donor getting in equal trouble for the abortion, the problem with that is that women have rightfully long argued that ultimately the decision to abort is theirs. A man should not coerce a woman to carry the fetus to term. It is our body, it is our decision. So it does make sense logically that when it comes to abortion, it is our body and it is our decision. I mean, if we're going to say that they have no claim on our receiving an abortion, it's only logical that they also have no ultimate claim on
getting in trouble. Like there's
the abortion is ours. The abortion is our decision.
Right.
If we don't want them involved, they're not involved, good or bad.
I agree with that. Like, I agree that it is, our body, we make our choice, and ultimately we shouldn't be coerced into having a child that we don't want, even if it's the other parent who's asking you not to have the abortion. But it seems to me unfair that, for example, and let's look at it from the other side of the coin, the other side of the equation. Say that you're in Texas, you get pregnant, you can't abort. There's no way you can't even pay to get out of state to find another abortion provider. And then the person who's also responsible for the pregnancy they don't want to have any type of responsibility on the kid. You want to abort, but you can't. And then the other person is like, that's your problem. That kid's your problem. I'm not even gonna. So I don't see any laws forcing that kid being born because you can't have an abortion into the responsibility of at least two people. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. I thought you meant they should get in equal trouble if she seeks an abortion.
Looking at it from your perspective, I think you're right in the sense, what you said, I agree with. It's ultimately our choice. But at the same time, if say you want an abortion, but you can't have it, there's so many cases in which you're not going to have the support of the other person to have the kid. So why? It's like you're being obligated to have a child by the state, but the state is not obligating both parents to take care of the child. Right? It's sort of like, anyway, what do you think, Lenora?
Well, to Kristen's point, like I never thought about it that way. And I can't argue against it too, really, where if we've been fighting for the right to make our own decisions, and if our decision is going to get us in trouble or in Texas case, get the abortion provider in trouble, that is our responsibility, not the sperm donor, because we've been saying it's our decision. So if they're not going to be a part of that decision, they should know they also shouldn't be a part of the consequence, if that makes any sense. That's what I picked up from what Kristen said, which it's hard for me to argue against that, because that is true. That's like the double standard of saying women have equal rights, but in a divorce, if the women should be getting half, like the alimony, but on the flip side, the women should not be paying alimony, but yet we've been fighting for equal rights, and people get up in arms when the woman has to pay the guy because she might be the breadwinner, and they're like, well, that's unfair, the woman should keep everything. But if it's the guy paying the woman, there's no big deal. So I get that. My gripe with the fact that, so I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole with pro-life on Reddit and Twitter, which is never a smart thing to do, but I was curious to see what the discussion was. And again, when pro-life, meaning people who are anti-abortion, who are very happy that this law is now in place, when they are talking about a woman's right to choose, or that they shouldn't have a choice, that abortion is murder, and that every woman should just take responsibility, not once does the man come up in the conversation. Sorry, the person who's the sperm donor. Like, not once is that part of the conversation, meaning if it's a rape, if it's incest, because these exemptions are like, you're not allowed to use these exemptions to get an abortion based on that law in Texas. So if you're a rape victim, a victim of incest, you cannot abort that fetus. So when people are using those arguments, what I've seen online, not once has anyone said, oh, well, maybe the people with penises should not be doing that. Like, not once does anyone take accountability for the perpetrators of, I'm talking about the criminal aspect of it here. Never once does anyone talk about that. Like, why and I mean, I know this has been going on since Bible days, but why? And how come no one focuses a part on that conversation? It's all putting the blame on the woman or the person with the uterus, regardless of circumstances. And I mean, we're talking about extreme cases, but even just, an accident. And then there's people like, oh, well, babies aren't accidents. Oh, anyway, that's another rabbit hole. But never once is the person with the penis in the conversation as to for being held accountable in any of those arguments, whether it's pro-choice versus pro-life, whatever. And that's annoying. It's just like, it's only the person with the uterus. It's just immaculate conception, and there's this fetus all of a sudden, and we have to follow through with it. Like, it's annoying. I don't know what else to say about it. That's what bothers me. I said, again, like Isabel said, the person with the penis is not being held accountable in these conversations either. Maybe they're the ones on Twitter. Probably.
They're the ones on Twitter going, yes, the abortion law passed. Like, I saw a picture the other day, and I think it was an anti-abortion rally or something. And the funny thing is, in the picture, you cannot see a single woman, not one.
It's just men.
It's just white men.
Oh my God.
With signs in an anti-abortion rally. And I was like, dudes, honestly. And you know what you just mentioned, Lenora, I mean, you think about, have you girls heard about selfing? No? Okay, so selfing is when a person with a penis takes their condom off during intercourse without telling the person they're having sex with.
Ooh, okay.
It's called stealthing. I don't know why it's called like
stealthing?
that. But yeah.
Oh, no, okay, all right.
Yeah, and so apparently there's a lot more common than people think. And so that, of course, could, if it could like result into an unwanted pregnancy, obviously. Because if you're, okay, I'm taking care of my birth control, but you're also thinking about, this person is putting on a condom, we should be fine. But they don't, and for some reason it fails, and you're not the one to blame because you wanted the condom to be on, and then you realize, oh, he didn't have it on because he took it off in the middle of, and didn't tell me. And even so, I know that right now there are certain countries in which stealthing it's actually become illegal and also sort of penalized as rape, but not all countries. So can you imagine is getting pregnant because you were a victim of stealthing and having to go through with that pregnancy because you have no choice? Doesn't the other person should be accountable in this case as well?
You know what? Men aren't thinking, I mean, just in general, well, like the men who are out there at the anti-choice rallies aren't, I mean, either they all desperately want to be parents, or they are not considering that women also stealth and women also will save what's in a condom and put it in herself later so she can get pregnant without his consent or his knowledge. I think I think abortion has probably been a very valuable thing to a lot of men, mostly politicians who don't want their mistresses to have kids. Like, if you can't kill the mistress, you at least have to make sure she gets an abortion. Maybe talking about Chandra Levy here, old story, but we're pretty sure everyone knows who did it. I forget if she was pregnant, she might have been. But politicians are very pro-abortion. That most pro-life politicians have probably relied on at least the possibility of abortion in their extracurricular relationships.
Activities. I was thinking of your previous president.
Oh,
the one
who Bush? No. Clinton?
No, 45.
Oh,
your previous.
Yes,
you have
Chandra,
a new president.
Chandra Levy apparently told at least one friend that she was pregnant and that the baby was Gary Condit's, but apparently an autopsy showed she wasn't pregnant. But either way, there was probably some threat of pregnancy in his life. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the guys aren't thinking about this. They aren't thinking about how this is going to affect them. It's probably a lot of them are thinking, okay, I don't want to have a kid and I really don't want her to get pregnant, but at least if she does, there's always abortion, and without that, someone who doesn't want to be a parent doesn't want to be a parent, whether regardless of what genitalia they have. Granted, the woman has to do the pregnancy thing and she's the one who can get in trouble for an abortion and she's the one who's going to be stuck with all the work, but in places where child support is required, that's kind of a hassle. If you have a guilt complex or any kind of conscience, you're not just going to bail, so it's pretty inconvenient for them too.
But isn't this about getting votes? I look at the person, like your previous president, meaning 45, the orange one, that that brought in two specific people into the Supreme Court, and then with the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when this now, the Supreme Court didn't do anything to block this bill from happening. If you look at those two key people that he brought in, who one of them has 7 children, the other one is
an idiot
and a creep and has daughters, and heaven forbid they decide to have an abortion one day. I hope that one of them does, just because it would be egg on his face. I'm really not a fan of that man. I hope his daughters make good choices and hey, maybe be child free forever. That'd be great. They can come on our show. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. The fact that president was made a point, even, and I don't really think he necessarily is pro-life, but he, was swinging for that party. And that was a platform he used, if I'm not mistaken. So when I think of politicians making these decisions, they're not because they can still access whatever they need. They can still access that stuff. It's just they want the votes, and they're in key places where that is a big conversation, and the everyday average person, it's going to affect them, and they want to get those votes. They're going to be promoting this, whether they believe it or not, because they're still cutting all of the essential services. They're still cutting, I look at the places where, what is it, blue? I don't know what colors you guys use. What's the pro-life color? Blue? Red? Okay. I don't know. So the red states, I'm sorry, what's the education there? and healthcare and all that sort of thing. I mean, and what decade are they living in? You know, these politicians are pandering to that mindset, and they probably believe it because they're usually from there. So I just look at it as like they're trying to get reelected, or they successfully get reelected because they promised to turn back the clock and make life the way it used to be, which is take away women's rights to do things. So, and on that note, like, we're having an election here. Isabel, your boyfriend called an election 2 years early. Thanks,
Why?
Trudeau, because he's in a minority of my government right now, and he's liberal, so he's pro-choice, but he's hanging on by a thread as a minority government. And so he's taking a play out of his dad's book when his dad was Prime Minister of Canada. He called an election 2 years early, so later on this month we're having an election here in Canada because he wants a majority government, and he figures right now, because there isn't another opponent that could probably take him on, he figures it's safe. Good luck. But my point is like, the person I'm voting for is actually will be from the conservative government, because I don't like the person in power here. And that conservative leader has stated that he's pro-choice, however, did some digging, and he will still allow his members of parliament to bring in private member bills that maybe kind of sneakily skewer the abortion laws here, because we are a pro-choice country. So he kind of waffles back and forth. So I still have to like do my due diligence on who am I voting for when it comes to this issue, because Canada's pro-choice. I think every leader is like, we will make sure that abortion debate does not reopen up here, but that's not a guarantee for anything. And I know I repeat myself on this, but it's true. Whatever country you're in, just because it's this way now doesn't mean it's going to be this way in 20 years, because there are still people that think that way. And so now looking at what's happening in Texas, how it's going to probably influence many other states that want to follow suit. And I read that Joe Biden is trying to see what they can do to protect women in Texas, so that like if there's something at a federal level they can do. I'm curious to see if there's anything, or if they follow through with that. Like, it's you got to be always on your guard as a female, it feels like, you know, because these people who are making these decisions and bringing these bills and pandering to enough people that keep electing this mindset. That's the other thing, you know. It's just, it's not ever really about the fetus. It's about winning an election.
It's never about the fetus. It's never about the kid, the unborn child, the unborn child. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, and on that subject of pandering and you know, being political and whatnot, but we know Texas is one of the most conservative countries in the U.S. Conservative states in the U.S. Sorry,
they want to be a country.
Do they though? They do. Oh my God. And they're like extremely religious, and they have, like, I'm talking in general, I'm generalizing here. I'm not saying all Texans are like this, but they're very conservative, and they have very conservative values. So I wouldn't be surprised if the person who like proposed the bill they don't even believe in it. They just want to do it just for popularity, basically, because they know it's gonna put them on the right side of the ballot, to put it in a way. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because politicians often sacrifice their own personal points of view, their personal values, just for votes. So
I'm pretty sure that's what
really
45
sad.
did.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because when was ever he a Republican? I mean, it sucks because what it does for me when I see, and when I mean this is just kind of viewing things online, which, you know, that's where the conversation is when you see a lot of these, like the pro-life. And the thing is there are child-free people who are pro-life. They've stated that on our Instagram page. And I mean, everyone can think however they want to think, but what it does is it sends a message to just kind of repeating, like in the pro-life movement, as to, oh, abortion is murder. It's scientifically proven by a select few that life begins at conception. I mean, there's a big argument. And there's, when I read through both sides, like, you know, the pro-life stance, the pro-choice stance, I can see both sides, because yes, okay, I understand why people would think this way as a pro-life person, and why, like, and I fall on the pro-choice side of things, but I see both sides of the argument. But at the end of the day, it's just such dangerous thinking when you see things like this happening in Texas, how it spurns people to really start coming after human rights in general. And they could argue that, abortion is against a human right. Because I mean, and then it gets into the gray area, like, okay, well, are you paying child support while the fetus is still in the womb? And do they get to vote? And, like in Canada, they're not a separate legal entity. A fetus is not. So, I mean, and I've said that to some people, and they've come up like, well, that doesn't make it right. And then you just go, and that the argument's never going to be won, in my opinion. I don't think it has to be. I mean, because everyone's going to think how they're going to think. But bottom line, it's like the politicians making the choice of what you specifically get to do to your body under the guise of, oh, we're speaking up for the unborn. But the minute they're born, what kind of quality of life is that going to have? That fetus going to have, right? And that's also, they never talk about it further. They never discuss, the conversation never goes any further. It's just like, oh, they have a right to live. Well, living means different things for different people. The quality of life is vastly different for all of us, but they don't talk about that.
I think you had an interesting point about that, what you sent us in the article about people who were put up for adoption. I think you mentioned something like that, Lenora.
Yeah, so there was actually, okay, and I didn't know all this. Kristen, you may have known this. So the person that sparked Roe versus Wade, which was the what was it, the lawsuit that brought in, that helped decriminalize abortion? Is that the right way of defining it? Okay, so this woman, her name, what was her name? This is on People. The source I'm quoting is from people.com. So Norma McCorvey. So she was the Jane Roe in the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade, which is what set, which made abortion legal in the US. So she ended up having 3 children. So the daughter, who's now 51, is coming out, speaking out about, I mean, she was the fetus when this whole case was happening. And because it went on 3 years, her mother, Norma, gave birth to her because the verdict wasn't reached, or the case wasn't done until she was 3, like until, she had given birth. So she was put up for adoption. And the woman who was Jane Roe had 3 kids in total, and all 3 of them were put up for adoption. So the oldest daughter was adopted, and she's speaking out about what it kind of like her experience with this whole thing, because she did, I guess, reach out to her mother at one point. And she said, yeah, this is what she really said that to me really resonated with. So this woman's name is, what's her name? Shelley Lynn Thornton. Okay, so this is the daughter of Jane Roe from the Roe v. Wade case. So she said, when someone's pregnant with a baby and they don't want that baby, that person, meaning the fetus, the developing person, develops, okay, so that person develops knowing that they're not wanted. Okay, so that's what really resonated with me on there. And then I just lost it. Where did it go? Good thing for editing. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. And then she said that she also struggles with depression and anxiety. Okay, let me redo that part again. So this daughter says, and is quoted here on people.com, when someone's pregnant with a baby and they don't want that baby, that person develops knowing they're not wanted, said Shelley, who also opened up about struggling with depression and anxiety. And then she goes on to say that in 1994, she had a phone call with her birth mother, so which again is Jane Roe. And I was like, what? Am I supposed to thank you for getting knocked up and then giving me away? I told her I would never, ever thank her for not aborting me. So that was an interesting statement. And then the article talks about how like she went and had kids of her own the first time she got pregnant, she wasn't sure what she would do, but decided against having an abortion. And that she's also reached out to her two sisters. So they all have the same mom, and they were all given up for adoption. And it doesn't go too much into that, but you know, her eldest child, she decided to keep, and she didn't want him to feel like he was unloved or a burden or anything like that. So, you know, and I believe in that heart, like wholeheartedly. Like, I am a product of two people who wanted to have children. Funny thing is, I did not have that love for them back the way they had for me. It's just how it turned out. And that's a whole other conversation. But I do believe that if you are pregnant and you do not want, I absolutely feel like that energy is going to go into that fetus. I have absolutely no doubt. I totally believe that, because there's a connection there. And because I joking, like, my mom always thought she was having a boy, which totally explains a lot about me, because I came out a surprise as a girl. And that's a little iffy sometimes. So, you know, like, I totally believe in what the pregnant person is feeling is transferred to the fetus. And the unwanted aspect of it, I don't doubt that for a second, you know. And she, like I said, like, she says she's not thanking her mother for not aborting her, because it doesn't sound like she's had like a wonderful life. And it's, anyway, what are your thoughts on all of that? I know we have to wrap soon because Kristen has to go.
Yeah, I think well, it's been said here, and everyone knows that that as far as politicians and lawmakers are concerned, they don't give a shit about the embryo, they don't give a shit about the fetus, they don't give a shit about the kid that is eventually having a life. They manipulate the people who have been brainwashed into believing that an embryo is an actual baby. And they manipulate those emotions in order to get them to be on board with whatever their pro-life agenda is. And I think, like, everyone knows this, which is why I'm really pissed off at journalists in quotes, who don't do their job. It's like they pre-arrange these conversations, they ask these bullshit easy questions that they aren't even questions, they don't encourage a discussion. They're not asking these politicians, okay, you say you're concerned about the life of the fetus, but what about what happens to the fetus once it becomes a child living in a situation where the family is now going to be further thrust into poverty, or where someone what if someone says, look, I have a illness of some kind, whether it's a mental illness or a disease or something, I do not want to pass this on. What do you say to that child? How do you explain your concern, your expressed concern for the child, knowing that these stats hold true, that you know, the more people who don't want kids, the more you might just have abandoned kids? I want them to ask those questions and force someone to answer those questions, because right now there's not actually a conversation happening. Journalists aren't doing shit. Journalists, I don't even know what the hell they do anymore. They never asked Trump anything difficult, except maybe one. Savannah Guthrie might have asked him something once. It's just such weakness and spinelessness on the part of, like, they might write articles about things that happen, like, as a consequence. There's an NBC News article that says, and everyone also knows this, if you have a lot of money, you can go far away to get your abortion where it's legal. You can take a trip, you can fly, you can go get it done there. If you're poor, you can't fly anywhere. You might not even have a car to drive hundreds of miles to get your abortion. So the people who are not going to be able to get abortions are the people who can't afford to go get them. And these, shit, I lost my train of thought. All I know is that these issues aren't being addressed in these conversations with these politicians. They're not asking them anything difficult. It's just so, we're all like, oh yeah, I was going to say that articles will say that, articles will point those out, but no one is being confronted directly about their legislative or political decisions. They're not, I don't know what they're afraid of. I don't know why they're so cowardly. All I know is they're not doing shit. Like, they're basically worthless.
And speaking of being called out, do you want to talk about that article that you did write, which basically does the thing that you said that journalists don't do to politicians?
But I mean, the thing is, like, I'm not talking to anyone directly. I mean, they don't have to, they can just this like they do anything else. And this is just something on Medium. It's not even like it has readers really, like the New York Times say. And even the things like that are in the New York Times don't have an effect because politicians can just blow those off and give talking points on TV. And a journalist might try twice to ask a question, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, I'll just moving on then. Mm-hmm. But what I would like them to ask about even are the similarities between abandonment and abortion. So you're stopping abortions in your state. In the country, 7,000 kids are abandoned each year that are registered as abandoned kids. Even with the safe haven places, there are still babies found in dumpsters and on roadsides, much like in the Age of the Child. The reason people abandon children, according to Very Well Family, parents who abandon their children often do so because they believe they're ill-equipped to provide the emotional and financial stability the child needs. That's if they're abandoned. I'm guessing that people who abandon their kids, maybe they had some kind of, I don't know, a fantastic idea about how you'll find ways to figure it out. The Lord will provide. It's always a good time to have a kid because it's never a good time. So you just have to do it. It'll work itself out. Maybe that's why it happens. Or maybe it happens because they couldn't afford to get an abortion. Whatever the reasons are, the reason people get abortions also are things like resource limitations, such as financial constraints, or they don't have support from a partner, which means they are afraid for the stability of the kid, which are the same reasons people abort kids. So if you take away all these abortions, you're going to have the same problems existing with these people who aren't willing or prepared to be parents. So now you're probably just going to find a lot of abandoned kids around, and that's going to get expensive. So the Texas government isn't doing itself any favors there. I don't know, man. It's just, and then you have all these people wanting their $10,000 bounties, and they're just going to overburden the legal system. And I don't feel sorry for the legal system of Texas. I just know that they've invited this torch carrying mob of freaking greedy, weird weirdos who would probably burn witches if they thought they were witches. Mm-hmm. And then there's the whole abuse thing, like whether a child is wanted is a pretty good predictor of, or wanted or planned or intended is a pretty good predictor of its likelihood of being abused. But that doesn't matter to politicians either, and which is why I think they should be asked these questions straight up. Just, if you want to just deal with the actual issue as it is. Everyone knows it's a fantasy that they give a shit about the kids. So deal with what the issue is, and let's have the argument there, because then something is happening. At least something is happening. A conversation is happening. Right now, it's just a bunch of people running around like fluttering like these flailing freaking idiots. It's just infuriating. Do something. Don't be a fucking pussy. And I am a feminist, and I'm still going to say that word because that's all I can think of right now.
Well, that is.
Is it bad that I said pussy though? Because that's not a
No,
feminist
we've said cunt 3 times in an episode. You are not. I'm going to say this on record, and we're going to vote on this. You're not allowed to cut that part out of the episode. Well, that is it for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. If you would like to reach out to us with any comments, questions, episode suggestions, or you would like to appear on the show just to, have fun with us and co-host, because we do that on occasion, you can reach us at childfreegirls@gmail.com, and you can also visit our newly updated website, childfreegirls.com.
If you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps a lot. And if you're listening to us in a podcast form, please go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. You can also look for us on social media. We're very active, especially on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are also on Amazon. You can go and buy our book, Childfree Girls, Comfort Food for Thought, right behind Lenora, if you're watching this. And you can also find us on Clubhouse. We are the 3 co-founders of Childfree Club on Clubhouse. So you can definitely download the app now. It's open for all platforms, OS and Android. And look for us. And we have conversations 7 days a week.
And the question for this episode is, what question do you wish a real journalist, assuming there are still any out there who actually interview people on TV or for articles and try to get a straight answer out of them, what question would you like to ask a lawmaker or an elected representative? Can't believe these people are elected. And what's your question? Send it to us at childfreegirls@gmail.com or leave it in the comments below. And thank you. That is our show for today. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. No, you say bye.
No, you say bye.
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
You leave first.
I'm going.
Bye.
Bye.